So the furlough scheme ends today. Chancellor Rishi Sunak ruling out another extension. It also comes as families face a cut to the £20 uplift in universal credit.
Campaigners are concerned businesses and employees are not ready, with uncertainty over the future of almost 1 million workers who were expected to be still receiving support. We're joined now to talk about this by Chairman of Hollywood Monster in Birmingham, Tim Andrew, along with finance expert Gemma Godfrey and Deputy General Secretary of the Trades Union Congress, Paul Novak. Let's come to you first of all, Tim. Just tell us a little bit. Hollywood Monster, it's a signage business, isn't it? Is that right?
Good morning, Ben. Graphics business. We supply to many sectors across.
Okay.
But our main sector that we deal with is exhibitions and live events, so big participation events for people, and of course it's probably one of the most heavily affected.
Right. So when furlough was brought in for you, you were one of the industries that was being hit very hard. What did it mean for your business and for your staff?
Simply, it saved our business. I remember when it was announced, Rishi Sunak, I watched it in front of the TV. And be quite honest with you, I cried because it meant that much to us. We just didn't know where our next penny was coming from, purely because all our industries had literally closed their doors.
So the furlough scheme has been hugely important, Tim, to your business. What about the end of the furlough scheme? Are you nervous about it, or do you feel like, you know what, it's time for it to end, we need to get back to where we were?
Yes, but definitely time to get back to work. Our business is back up and running. In fact, we're back working weekends now. It literally has really bounced back better than I ever thought. And so it's great news for us. We've started to employ again as well. We've taken on 4 people since the pandemic. So it really has not only saved our business, but put us in a great position to really move on. But it is definitely time to get back to work, to normal, and obviously pay the massive, huge country debt that it's cost the country.
Paul Novak, Deputy General Secretary of the Trades Union Congress. Tim there says it was great, but now it's time to end. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer on this programme this morning said it was great. Now it should come to an end, with some caveats of certain industries that are still affected. Are you celebrating its end? Do you think it's timely?
Well, what I am celebrating, Kate, is the fact that, as Tim said, the furlough did keep millions of people in employment, and it's great that businesses like Tim's are back to normal. But unfortunately, there are large parts of our economy where things haven't gone back to normal. We've still got, up until today, 1.5 million people on furlough. 2/3 of those people will be working in sectors where we know businesses are struggling to reopen up, whether it's the creative industries, our aviation and travel industry. And we think it was a mistake, really, for the government to ignore employers, ignore unions in those sectors, and not extend the furlough in those circumstances where employers can't get back to normal. And that's the key thing. So I would hope the government would look again, but we desperately need support for our hospitality sector, for our creative industries, and for aviation and travel.
Are you hearing from, Paul, are you hearing from members who are really concerned about where they go from here because they just aren't going to have the money to be able to carry on?
Well, absolutely, Ben. And, I think, I went a couple of weeks ago with representatives from our aviation unions to talk to the aviation minister about the real concerns people have got in that sector, whether it's people flying planes, working in the airports, working in the shops around the airport, real concerns right across that sector. But I think working people just worried about a triple whammy that's coming down the line for them. Not only the end of the furlough scheme, we know we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis. Lots of low-paid workers are going to have a big hit in their pockets with the end of that £20 a week uplift in universal credit. And next year, we've got rises in national insurance coming down the line, which again will hit the lowest paid hardest. So I think what the government really needs is a plan to support working people, a plan to keep people in employment, yes, but also to keep money in their pockets as well.
OK, well, this morning the government's announced this new household support fund. It's announced that's going to be coming in, £500 million to support the most vulnerable families with food, clothes and vital goods. That might not be enough right now, but it looks like they're bringing out something, at least, to aid the next few months through the winter.
Yeah, but As I say, Kate, my worry is that while the government is giving with one hand, it's taking away with another. And we know that cut to universal credit will hit some of the poorest families who actually go out to work the hardest in this country. And, you know, the best way of making sure that people have a decent standard of living, can put food on the table and pay the bills, is to make sure that they've got a decent paid job. So I think the government does need to think about supporting those sectors that are still struggling, listen to employers, listen to unions, make sure that those sectors can continue to employ people.
Gemma, let's come to you, Gemma Godfrey. You're a finance expert, and you can sort of take a sort of distilled view on this from your experience as an expert in this world, because we hear from both Tim and from Paul the benefits of what the furlough scheme has allowed the members of Paul's union and Tim's business itself, but also the coming to the end and the fears that people have. How much has furlough cost the British people, and what is the future? How can the government ensure that those people that are going to suddenly drop out of furlough are going to be looked after and caught before it's too late?
I mean, this is a perfect storm, and that's the big concern, because, you know, families are still playing catch up. And when you talk about the cost for the government, that is why they're having to take, as Paul very aptly said, take with one hand while they're giving with another. So what's happening is that you've got 3 million people that were already excluded from in the first place. You've got other people that are underemployed, and that's costing our economy quite heavily as well. You know, people are working less hours than they want to and need to, and they owe on their bills. And what about those that have had to drop out of the job market altogether to care for their families during COVID? They've given up looking for work, all those that have had to retrain. And I think this is a really key issue about the retraining, because what we're missing in this picture is how long it's going to take to be able to retrain for the jobs that are open, because there's a mismatch. If you think about where most of the job losses were, they were in retail. If you look at where most of the job opportunities are, and people always talk about there being lots of job openings, but they're mainly in the health and social sector. So people will need to retrain, and it will take time. And that's why, yes, the furlough scheme was incredibly needed and has been a lifeline, but support going forward has to be really targeted. And it's a tough time at the moment because, yes, we're hearing about this fantastic hardship fund, but it's at a time when households are facing higher energy bills. And the increase in national insurance is not only going to hit employees, but it's going to make it's going to make it much more expensive for employers to keep these jobs open. So it's a very, very tough time right now before all of these kind of issues, fall into line.
And I think, yeah, you're right. It will take time. It'll feel worse before it even can begin to get better. Good to speak to all of you this morning.